Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of eCommerce Growth Show. It's my pleasure to have here all the way from Oregon, Jon MacDonald, which is alone at his office over there. So, John, thanks for being part of the show, and thanks for being here for us.
I'm excited to do it.
Great. So before doing it, I will tell our audience a bit of housekeeping. If at any moment you have a sparkling idea and you want to ask us something, you have the chat box on the right. So feel free to ask us because this is going to be an open conversation with a lot of insights around conversion rate optimization and e-commerce. The best way to get some applicable ideas would be to simply ask them on the chat. So now a bit about Jon. He's the founder of The Good, a conversion rate optimization firm that has achieved results for the largest online brands, including Adobe, Nike, Xerox, The Economist, and many more. Jon, thanks a lot for being here.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Great. So before starting, can you please tell our audience how you've got into this conversion rate optimization space at the very beginning?
Yeah, great question. So we were The Good. We were a e-commerce development firm. So we would help brands to launch e-commerce websites, overhaul their e-commerce websites. And what we found was that it became somewhat of a commodity, right? There were so many web development firms. There were, brands didn't really look at the code of their website. They really just cared, did it function, right? And what we really cared about was the user experience behind that. And what was the consumer experience on the e-commerce website? Well, what we found pretty quickly was after it was a commodity, I went around and I just started asking all of our best customers, why did you choose to work with The Good? What made us a little different in your mind? I kept hearing over and over that people really liked that we baked into every rebuild 3 months of optimization after the site launched. And I would every contract that went out, that was a requirement to work with us. If you wanted to work with us, we were going to optimize your site after. This was 11 years ago. So at that time, there was no conversion rate optimization industry, if you will. It was just kind of getting started. I don't even think the term was widely used, if at all. So we called it just continual optimization. That was just what we had been using at that time. And when I found that people really valued that, and that was a differentiating point from what our competitors were doing who were just building websites, we decided to pivot and focus exclusively on conversion optimization.
That was a good idea if you look behind.
Yes, 100%. I mean, there's tool sets now like OmniConvert and a whole industry built up around this. And, we've kind of ridden that wave from early on, which has been wonderful. We've got, now we've got an expertise around it. We've got a team built up around it. And it's all we do. All we focus on is helping brands to convert more of their existing website traffic from a visitor into a buyer.
Yeah. So at some for the audience, our audience for sure are aware about what's the conversion rate optimization, and why they are here is mostly because of CRO. But from your perspective, what is the top 3 mistakes that you think companies are doing wrong and that are harming their conversions from your perspective?
Well, I think the first thing is a lot of brands still aren't making data back to decisions, right? So they're not utilizing the clicks and movements of their site visitors to truly make decisions that are going to impact what consumers are doing on their website. And I think that, even those who are doing conversion optimization, I still think a lot of these brands, even the major brands that we work with, when we first come in, they may be doing A/B testing. They probably have a team based around A/B testing, and they want us to help augment that a little bit. The challenge is that they're still having decisions made at an executive level that are superseding any of the data or the outcomes from the testing. And the problem with that is that it's not being data driven, right? They're not letting the optimization say what should be done on their site. Secondly, I think a lot of brands think that conversion optimization is a one-time thing and done. And it's not. You can't just make some optimizations to your website and then be done with it, right? As you know, and your tool set helps out with A/B testing, and that type of optimization needs to have a compounding effect, right? So it needs to be growth month over month or test over test. You're learning from a test, and then you're compounding those learnings into the next hypothesis, the next test, into the next improvement on the site. And it's that compounding growth over time that is really going to show some massive and sustainable, which I think is the key, sustainable growth. If you just do a checklist that's online of all the best practices or any of that, you don't really know if that's going to help you because it hasn't been tested, right? For your specific site visitors. And so, the third thing, I mean, just to get super tactical, if there was something I could eliminate from the internet that I know really hurts conversions, it's going to be pop-ups. I'm a huge proponent of removing email pop-ups from your website. Every test we've ran over 11 years now on email pop-ups is that all they do is annoy consumers. And I think you really need to think of your website as if it was a retail store. Would you do something to a consumer in your retail store, right, if you weren't going to do it to them on your website? So think about it this way. Email pop-ups, right? If I walked into your store and you jumped out in front of me with a big sign and a clipboard and said, Jon, sign up for our emails, I would probably have a pretty violent reaction because I don't know anything about your store yet. I just walked in. I still don't know what products are right and best for me, yet you're asking me to sign up for your emails. And so I just think the timing on those is generally off for most of the e-commerce sites that we work with.
Yeah, I can't argue with you too much. I'm a fan of removing the default voice of any brand, and I do believe that if you don't have a voice, you're in the wrong business. So the business of e-commerce means that you need to have a voice, and that voice shouldn't be annoying. And that's why the default, let's say, traps of grabbing some conversions here and there, for sure, it will harm the relationship that you're trying to build with your audience. I'm with you on this. I'm not with you though in the mechanics of triggering interactions which are relevant and one-to-one personalized with your audience.
Yep. So, yeah, and I think there are right ways to do it, and I think you make a good point there. The distinction is it's relevant. The timing is appropriate, right? So what I'm really talking about here is the timing of, should somebody come to your website and immediately as soon as it loads up, you're popping up and asking them to join your email list? That's going to be disruptive, right? You're getting in the way of what the consumer is looking to do on your website. And that's really only one of two things. That's to do research on your products or services and to understand if that product or service is going to solve their pain or their need, the reason they came to your website. And if you can help them and facilitate doing those two things, then very easily you'll get more conversions. But anything you do that gets in the way of those is just going to be disruptive or very, very, at the least, very annoying for a visitor.
That totally makes sense. Jon, let's focus on the real-time environment over here. So you are locked down over there at your office. I've just said shh to my kids so that we can make this live. And the current environment is not that appealing for us. However, the e-commerce is now on the hype. So almost all the industries are doing very well year over year on e-commerce. What do you think they should do? Because we are doing this roundup, and you are invited live to participate in the roundup of 25 industry experts. What's your response to what e-commerce managers should do right now?
Well, I think that providing consumers with an optimal experience now more than ever is really, really relevant. And I think that what you need to really be thinking about is how you're going to move forward as a brand. As you said, most brands are seeing a big gain right now, but what we're also seeing from that is that means that they have stopped either driving traffic or spending on driving traffic because they feel like, we don't need it right now. We're doing so well. So they found a way to cut back originally, and they did not reinstate that spend. And I think that's a mistake. I'm hearing from our customers now, we don't do anything with driving traffic. We only help brands convert or consumers convert once they've reached your website, right? So, but what I'm hearing from industry partners is that ad spend or ad costs is it's down about a third. So it's gotten pretty cheap, right, to advertise. There's a lot of free space out there right now because a lot of the major brands have cut back. And so no matter what the medium you want to advertise, it's probably a little cheaper now than it was. And I think it's important to point out that, stopping is not a plan, it's a reaction. And I think so many brands right now in direct to consumer and e-com have had a reaction and not a plan, because we couldn't have planned for this. Nobody knew it was coming. It hit so quickly that it's really hard to have planned for this, or to even have a plan that you pull out of the file and say, this is what we're going to execute on. It didn't exist. But I think a lot of brands, unfortunately, have just had that reaction and have not gotten back into the planning mode. Right. And I think that's what's going to be important here is not just having the reaction, getting over that reaction, and now coming back into the plan. So instead of cutting marketing spend, I think reallocating some of that spend to focus on how to better convert your traffic is really going to be key, because really want to make sure you're getting even a higher return on that ad spend. Right. And I think in addition to that, that's, focusing on conversion right now or those user experience metrics, if conversion is only one of them, really is going to be sustainable over time, where ad spend and ad cost is going to go back up again.
Great. So if you are to look at some quick wins for the e-commerce brands, which would those quick wins be from your perspective?
Well, I think I'm seeing a lot of e-commerce brands who are discounting right now. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think that discounting is not optimization. Discounting, I call it margin drain, because that's really what it is. It's just hurting your margins and revenues. It's not truly helping your conversions in a sustainable way. So I think brands should be maintaining price integrity right now. And, think about it twice. Do you really need that discount for your product in order to get it to sell? Are there other barriers that you should be focusing on? Now, discounting covers up a lot of challenges. It does. It just makes a lot of problems go away. But then those problems come back as soon as you get rid of the discount. And so I'm an advocate of just solving those challenges that your consumers are having. And I think that discounting is going to devalue brands in the long term. I often say, once you bring a consumer in via a discount, they are forever a discount customer. And they're going to see your brand as a discount brand moving forward, because they never want to pay retail again. I'm sure you have the same experience I do. Is if I buy something at 25% off or whatever the big discount is, that's the new price for me. I'm not going to want to pay that retail price ever again.
Yeah, because that means you are paying 25% extra for nothing.
Right.
Nobody wants to pay something for nothing, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that brands can focus on those highest value customers as well, right? So reduce the overall customer acquisition costs by just focusing and spending to improve your site and get customers to come back for repeat purchases, as opposed to spending to just bring in new traffic. So really take some effort, segment your lists, start looking at who are your top spenders, who has ordered from you before. And if you want to run a deal, give a deal to people you know have been loyal to your brand over time. That's the time to discount, right? And say, hey, I know things might be tough right now. You've always been a great customer of ours. Here's a small discount to help you out. That's going to go a long way, as opposed to using discounts to bring people in, new customers.
You are touching an important aspect here, Jon, because I'm an obsessed guy in terms of focusing on who matters. And I'm a big proponent of RFM segmentation and looking at the ideal customers that you have in your database, except treating them better during this time. What is your opinion, or which are some other ways to persuade and to nurture your best customers from your perspective? So how are you seeing this happening?
Well, I think that brands should really be focusing on their highest value products right now, right? So, look at those products with the best margins and ensure that they've optimized those product detail pages. And I think at the same time, focusing on your highest value channels. So where are people coming from that are really driving value for your brand over time? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it Google Ads? Whatever it might be, bring those people in and really focus on optimizing those points, where those channels come into your site. And I think that's really going to help provide a better consumer experience. Look, our mission at The Good is to remove all of the bad online experiences until only the good ones remain. And that's how we got our name, The Good. And I think that it's something to really consider, is just focus right now on your consumer experience. I often say it's really hard to read the label from outside the jar. What I mean by that is a brand is so close to their own site. They know every detail of their product. They know how to find those products on their website. They likely had a big hand in designing the website. So of course, there's no barriers for them, right? But if you have a new to file customer, it's their first time on your website, what's their experience going to be like? And the only way to know that is to talk to consumers who have never been to your site before. Do user testing, right? Where you're sending people to the site who match your ideal customer profile, asking them to complete some tasks while you're observing them. You can do this, pretty cheaply these days. I mean, everybody's at home with a little extra time right now. So get on a Zoom call, get on a Google Meet, whatever you can do it under. Ask them to share their screen and just talk out loud about the experience that they're having as you give them a couple of really broad tasks to do. Say, if you're selling t-shirts, just say, go find the best t-shirt for you. And stop there. And, I recommend you turn off your video so that they don't see your facial reactions as they're giving feedback, because you don't want to influence it. And you'll probably learn some interesting things. You probably will disagree with some of the feedback they give you, but you need to understand that that's what a new customer's experience is like. And it's going to be very different from what a brand's experience is like. So stepping outside of that jar is really, really important.
Here, Jon, I've met recently Bob Moesta, which was quite involved in the jobs to be done methodology, and we've chat. He was part of our podcast Growth Interviews, and he simply blew my mind, because at some point he's using this interrogation method, which is learned from an ex-FBI detective. And he states that a good interview with a customer should be not less than an hour, and you can disregard all the first 15 minutes because that's going to be the bullshit out of it. And if you want to go deeper and understand the underlying reasons that why he's making that higher, because he says people are not buying products, they are hiring products for some jobs to be done. So I'm a big fan of surveys.
Yeah, that's great. And that jobs to be done methodology is one that we love as well and gets talked about on our team quite a bit. There's a great video from a Harvard professor who walks through the jobs to be done methodology and talks about how McDonald's actually started serving milkshakes for breakfast. And they didn't understand why people were buying milkshakes in the morning on the drive-thru. And they were like, this is a dessert. It's only, we only used to serve it at lunchtime, but people were requesting it. And the job to be done that they didn't understand was that it was a filling, quick and easy breakfast that people could drink in their car. and it contained milk and all these other things that could be, it was somewhat sugary and sweet, but it was also somewhat healthy. And so, I think that it's something to consider if you look at it in that manner. Another great feedback book is called The Mom Test. And it's called the mom test because it's always you should understand your mom is going to give you nothing but good feedback, right? It's just, that's their job, right? Is to tell you that everything's great and you're doing a wonderful job and cheer you on. You don't want feedback from cheerleaders. You want feedback from people who are going to be honest with you. And it's true. You should not listen to the first hour of what people say. It's not, they're just going to want to make you feel good. As humans, that's our goal, is to make other humans feel good. Instead, it should be that you're looking to get that honest feedback. And sometimes it takes a while to get there. So if you want some interrogation questions as well, it's a great book.
Yeah. Clayton Christensen, unfortunately, he passed away. That was the professor from
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So we have questions from our audience. We have Costine, which is asking, what about the first-time visitors on your e-commerce website? What are your thoughts on getting them on your email list or make a purchase for the first time without offering them a coupon discount code in a pop-up? So, what's your take on this?
Yeah. So the best way to do this is twofold. One is to put the sign up for the email, instead of in a pop-up, just bake it into the page content. People will find it. If they want to sign up, they will do that. You can still, offer some bit of a, small offer, but there's a ton of ways you can do offers without offering a discount, right? So I'm just not a proponent of saying 20% off, right? Instead, say free shipping, right? Sign up, you get free shipping. Or sign up, we'll do a free gift with purchase, right? There's a lot of other things you can do here that are bonus ads that will help people to want to purchase because they realize they're getting something they wouldn't normally get. So they'll sign up just to be able to unlock that. But if you look at it as unlocking a benefit and a bonus onto the purchase, that's a different way of thinking about offering something to a consumer besides a percentage off. That percentage off is the problem because that's the mindset you don't want. Now, if you're telling me a free gift with purchase, now I'm like, oh, I got something extra because I signed up for this and I'm paying retail. So I'm not, next time I come back, I'm not expecting the free gift because I'm not signing up for your email list again. But I'm also not expecting a big price off because I'm used to paying that price. So there's a bunch of great resources. If you go to thegood.com and go into the search box and type discounts, we have an article that has 90 to 100 different types of promotions you can do that are not all percentage off discounts. So there's a ton of options out there that are not percentage off.
Jon, if we are looking from a broader perspective, myself, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My last company was an e-commerce. I've got, let's say, obsessed about customer retention and customer conversion rate, and I've built a whole company and a whole technology around these concepts. And nowadays, I'm aware about the how full I was back in 2010 and how easy it would have been for me to improve the results if I would have listened to my customers and if I would have understood that the customer journey is what matters. Because we as CRO experts, we are a bit, let's say, obsessed about website optimization, but it's the whole customer journey, and we have the customer journey, and we have a lot of touch points throughout the whole customer journey that needs to be fixed. And I'm seeing this trend, and I want your opinion on it. I've seen this trend of like Ton Vesseling from Online Dialogue, Andre Maurice from Conversion Craft. I've had them interviewed as well, and John Ekman from Conversionista. They are all, and maybe we are all acknowledging the fact that, hey, we are fixing bad sites, bad websites, because their owners are not crafting proper customer journeys, which are including the digital customer journey, which is just a part of it. And what's your take on this, Jon?
Well, I agree. I think most brands are not crafting the right journey. And I think the only way to truly understand that journey is to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. And that's where I think informing where, A/B tests need to be informed by some data point along the way. You shouldn't just be testing things at random, right? That's going to be a waste of your time. And I think most brands know this now, but they don't understand where to get these ideas from because, again, they're too close to the brand, right? So getting those ideas from your consumers by doing things like user testing, paying attention to the data to help inform the hypotheses, really going to benefit you. And I think almost as much time is spent doing testing needs to be spent strategizing for those tests. And I think that's where most brands fall down, is they don't invest as much time looking at what should be tested, what are the potential outcomes. Instead, they just jump right into the testing because they want the results. We all want the results more quickly, right? But you got to put the work in. And it's just like, I'm 6'7". I play basketball still. I played in college here in the United States. I wouldn't be able to make a basket if I didn't shoot 1,000 shots before that, right? Like you have to put in the work to be able to perform well when it's game time. And it's the same thing with testing. When you're running testing, that's your game time. You need to put in the work before that in practice. And what that's going to be is really doing the strategy work before you jump into testing. And most brands that we end up helping that are already doing testing, they're doing just disparate testing all over their site without a seemingly a game plan, really. And they're just trying to improve one metric here or there. And really, we look at it again as going back to what I said earlier, as a compounding effect. So you really want that to grow, test over test and build upon the learnings for the next test.
Yeah, that's good. But Jon, why do you think let's say the adoption of CRO and data-driven process in growth marketing hasn't been adopted? Because we've been in the same industry. We've all waited for the CRO to take over SEO, and that is not happening yet. Why do you think it's like this?
I think that two things. One is, SEO it's a vanity metric to get people to your site, right? Everybody's excited when their visitor count on their website goes from 1,000 to 2,000 to 10,000, right? They're really excited to see that growth curve. And that's a metric that executives really understand. So leadership at brands, they just get that really quickly. They say, oh, we have more people. But that's the wrong mindset. If you step back from those vanity metrics and you look at breaking things down a little more, what really matters is all of those small interactions on your site that those visitors are having. You need visitors, right? Just like you need traffic at a retail store. But if people are just turning around and walking away from your store, then what's the point of them even coming in? And I think it's the same thing on your website. You really need to understand what's preventing people from buying and focus on that. Now, why isn't it being adopted? I think that, what we're seeing now is a revolution to going after the data. And I think actually, going through this pandemic right now with e-com, I think that retail not being open is helping direct-to-consumer brands focus on their website a little more. And I think we'll see this kind of change over time coming up. Where more and more focus is put on the user experience online, because more and more people are they're getting used to buying online right now. That's the only option they have. And so I think we'll see it continue. I think that as a whole, unfortunately, though, executives, leadership at larger direct-to-consumer brands, they are focused a little more on those vanity metrics around traffic, their sales, things like that. And doing A/B testing isn't sexy, right? It's very data driven. It's not always, to me, it's fun. To you, it's fun, right? We love this stuff, but to an executive who doesn't quite understand what statistical significance means, or they're not really into all the mathematical formulas that need to go into proving these things out. They don't understand why you're doing this type of testing on the site and changing things that have been the way they are forever and have gotten them to be successful to this point. So I think there's a lot of mental barriers there more than anything else. And this is why I always go back to data-driven decision making. And it's not uncommon that at the good, we'll dump into the new brand and we'll propose some tests. And an executive says, no, we're not going to do that because we've always done it this other way. And I know that works. My response and our team's response is almost always, okay, I understand that, but let's test it. And then let me just come back with some data and I'll walk you through it. One of the things we did, we work with a well-known printer manufacturer. And one thing we did was we wanted to run some A/B testing on their printer product detail page. Yeah. We found a whole bunch of user concerns during user testing. And we knew we could improve the conversion rates dramatically if we fixed a few of these items. So we set out a whole testing plan. We proposed it, and the leadership said, no, we don't want to run some of these tests. You can run these other ones, but not some of them. And we said, okay, give us a week. We want to come back and prove to you we need to run these. We went out, we did a bunch of user testing, and we took video clips of the user testers failing at these particular points. And what we said was, let's just start a ticker in the bottom corner of how many dollars every time somebody deserts the site because they had these problems, how much that's adding up to. And at that point, we just put a 5 or 10 minute video clip together, and it just showed every time somebody dropped off whatever they had in their cart. And then that ticker just kept going up and up and up in the corner. And by the end of that, couple of minutes into that video and showing that to the executive, they were like, no, just stop it. I get it. Let's run the test. And I think it's just having empathy for that consumer, right? And what they're going through, and then making it real for the executive that it's costing them a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a great example. Jon, can you tell us from your history, because I'm sure you've seen hundreds, thousands of tests. Tell us, let's say, the experiment or the test that you've ran and you've learned the most out of it. If you can recall such a, that doesn't have to be the best experiment, but the one that opened your eyes the most.
Great question. I think one that was really eye-opening recently was we just ran a test on a navigation for a mid-size e-com brand, and it was a split navigation. So if you think about split navigation where the logo was in the middle of the nav and then they had items on either side, versus just having all of the items together and having the logo in the top left corner, which is what most consumers are used to. Yeah. And this was a higher end brand. So they were trying to come across on their site as a little more high end, fancy, if you will. And they thought, we could take some liberties with the design here. And so we found in user testing and doing eye tracking and heat mapping and all these other data points that consumers didn't even look at the right side of the nav. And they hit the logo and they would see the first couple items, see the logo, and then they would just look down the page. And they ignored everything on the right side. So what we found is that consumers just didn't even see those items. So it was almost pointless to have them over there. It was really eye-opening.
Sorry, Jon. Edward is asking if the example is still online, if we can look at it. But
yeah, no, it's not. They actually changed it, so we can. They actually changed it based on our example to our test to just be a full navigation. So what I'm saying here though is that the middle navigation did not perform well at all because people weren't seeing the items on the right. And it was really eye-opening to me and to our team because we've run a lot of tests on navigations using things like testing the copy that's in the navigation, testing different styles of navigation, testing a lot of other types of items. But we hadn't run a whole lot of tests on split navigation versus just having all the items together with the logo on the left side, like a typical website. What I kept coming back to and what I kept reminding the team here about, there's a great book called Don't Make Me Think by Stephen Krug. It's a little older now, perhaps, right? If you're in user experience, you've definitely heard of it. But he makes a really great point that is still true to this day. We are trained by using websites across the internet to have different conventions. We are trained as consumers that the logo is in the top left, that if you click that logo, it's going to take you to the home page, that then the navigation is there. And when you start moving things around to where people aren't used to it, because you, just for the sake of design, just for the sake of beauty, I will say, you're going to lose consumers. And that's exactly what was happening here. Was the brand, just for the sake of trying to make things a little different and to portray what they thought they were doing, was portraying a higher end experience, they really created a worse experience because consumers weren't used to it. And so that test really proved itself out.
Excellent. If the function of the logo is to get back to the homepage, don't mess around with it, because that's not going to change positive experience. Great. So we have Dave. He has a question. With disposable income tight now, and we as we sell premium perfume products above $200 and do not focus on discounting, what are your thoughts on how to promote these or other high ticket products?
Yeah, so high ticket products, I totally agree. Right now, we're actually seeing in brands that cater to Asian markets that we work with, we're seeing those high ticket items really start selling right now. So I think the trend is going to be that there's a lot of pent up demand, and people who buy that have higher incomes or just buy higher end and higher price point items are really going to see those start taking off in the next month or couple of months. As soon as this lockdown in each area is over, I think people are going to start getting back to normal, and there's going to be some pent up demand. I was just reading an article actually yesterday that in Asia, in China specifically, that Hermes, the really expensive handbag brand, if you will, that they did $2 million out of one retail store in one day, which was way more than they'd ever done, because it was the first day they were open. There was pent up demand. People just came in and bought. And so I think we're going to see that kind of come across the world and the globe as the lockdown stops, and people can get back out. And I think we're going to see that online as well.
Yeah.
But I think, just offering a tailored experience for those people. So what I mean by that is, following up with people individually has really been helpful right now. On a high ticket item, instead of discounting, I think you could definitely do things like overnight shipping if that's possible. There are discounts like that aren't percentage off that I think will really help convert. Again, gift with purchase. Say you were going to give 20% off or 10% off a high ticket item. That was going to be, let's just say $100 off. There's a lot you could give somebody that would add up to $100 that is not a $100 discount. So be thinking about it in that way.
I can also add some piece of advice here, Dave. I've actually made some research over the psychographic segmentation over downturns. John Quelch has a great idea, great insight. Back in 2008, he's a Harvard Business School professor. So he analyzed the behavior and the change in behavior after downturns, and he realized that there are 4 different groups of customers. The slam on the brakes, the ones that are stopping anything. The comfortably well off, which are the ones that you need to address. Also the comfortably well in are the ones that have purchase power during these days, so they are not affected about what's happening. And the pain but patient. So what you need to focus right now is on the comfortably well off. So the ones that simply there's nothing for them. This is not affecting them. And if this is not affecting them, you should be looking for them in your own database, do a research, identify your best customers, and then push these products to them, but in a manner that suggests that this is real-time marketing. So you're aware about this happening, but this is not affecting them, and you are actually amplifying the fact that they need to prove themselves that these conditions will not affect them. So mainly do your things, or treat yourself, because these are treats. Let's be honest, we can live without the products which are above $200, but they can't live without it, because this is a sign that they actually have a good life. They've deserved it. So treat yourself with this kind of product. So it's a matter of how you frame the products. It's not about the product features. It's about how framing steps in.
That's a great summary of exactly what must be happening over in China right now, right? Where people are going and buying, $2 million of Hermes, right? They have that pent up demand, and they're the well-offs and not affected. So that's great advice.
Okay, we have also a question from Maria. Do you recommend testing during this period? If so, should the strategy be different than the usual?
100% yes. And the strategy can be a little different. Here's why. If you are seeing an uptick in sales right now, that means more people are getting into your shopping cart. They're getting further down the funnel. Normally, you may not be able to do as much testing right now, or normally you would not be able to do as much testing that far down the funnel, because you wouldn't have as much traffic and it would take longer to prove things out. Now that you're having higher sales, that is the time to be testing things further down the funnel. So checkout, would be a great thing to be testing on right now if your platform supports it. And what I mean by that is, you can do everything from, showing and hiding fields, making things required, asking for less information, account sign up versus no account sign up, showing different shipping options in there as a way to increase revenue and average order value a little bit by tacking on some shipping fees. There's a lot of stuff that you could be testing there, different payment methods, all of those types of things. And it really will help you prove those things out a lot quicker right now than you normally would. So there's just a lot of things that, as you're seeing increased traffic in your website and increased sales, that you have your options for testing are just that much greater. And so it's really a great time to be testing. Normally, brands are really scared to test during that holiday, Black Friday, Cyber Monday period, because they don't want something to go wrong and disrupt their highest volume of sales. I'm hearing from a lot of brands right now that they're seeing the same amount or greater sales than they do during that period of the year typically. And yet they don't have that same mental barrier for testing right now. So it's really helped them to open up the floodgates of what can be tested, and doing that testing right now with all this great traffic. So 100% yes, do testing right now. You'll get things proven out that much more quickly. You'll see the value and return on your investment in testing much more quickly right now.
Jon, we have companies which have almost zero demand, right? Travel, hotels, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you suggest for those kind of companies for the recovery period and during this period? Just a second. Maria is also asking the follow-up on the latest question. But can you be sure that the results you are getting are relevant after the pandemic?
Yeah, great question, Maria. So if you're focusing on the consumer experience, the answer is yes. Now, if you were focusing on messaging around COVID or things that are only relevant to this time period, then no. But if you're focusing on good tenets of consumer and user experience on your site, then yes, that's going to sustain afterwards. You're just taking advantage of the additional traffic to prove those things out right now.
Perfect. So back to the question, zero demand travel industry, how do you prepare for recovery?
Well, I think that, again, stopping is not a good plan, and you need to put a plan in place on how you're going to be thinking about what to do once this initial shock to your business is over, right? So first thing I would recommend here is taking this time to really focus on having a better experience. Get all of those projects done for your digital and online experience that you weren't able to get done normally because you were too busy. You should have excess capacity, right? Now, you may not have money, but right coming in, but you have more time now. So use that time to really start accelerating, maybe clean up all that data and all that data tracking you had on your site that was kind of a jumbled mess before. Take this time and get some event, if you're using Google Analytics, put Google events all over your site so that you can start tracking things. Get heat maps on your site and actually start looking at that data so that when traffic picks back up and people start buying again, you have these reports built. You know what people are looking at, and then you can take advantage really quickly of all these trends once the stuff picks back up. Look, the reality is it will pick back up, right? We're in this temporary shock to the system for the worldwide economy, but we will get through this. I'm not a genie. I can't tell you when that's going to change, but it will change. And I think if you're able to sustain and you have the means to do so, even if it's scaling down to just yourself and then figuring out how to do all these things based on tutorials online, you have more time than money right now. Invest that time in things that are going to move you forward once traffic comes back in. So maybe you can't do A/B testing because you don't have the traffic on your site to prove those things out. That's okay. There's a lot of other things that you could be thinking about and doing. You could do user testing, and you could just find people, again, there's a lot of people at home right now who are willing to spend 15, 20 minutes with you on a Zoom call while evaluating your website for you and giving you feedback as if they're trying to go through and purchase. And I think now is the best time to be looking at improving your consumer experience and using this time and the resources that are available.
I also have an insight here. I've realized something. Cohort analysis, A/B testing. So what you could do if you have a large enough database, you could test if selling vouchers for future travels. If you have some good audience, and if your customers love you, maybe you could test on 100, 200, 500 out of them, if they would be willing to invest in buying vouchers so that you can stay alive as a company because they've been, let's say, appreciative about your company. And in this manner, you can get some cash for future sales. So we have another question coming from Roman. What are the main plugins, add-ons, or technologies used in average e-com websites in 2020 to track results and improve UX?
Yeah.
Of course, besides OmniConvert, right?
Right. I was just going to say, you're in the right place here. OmniConvert can do a lot of these things. And I think that's a nice all-in-one package so that you have all that data and it can work together. And I think that's what's going to be key here is, we end up working with brands that come to us and they have all these disparate tool sets that can't talk to each other, and you can't build segments off of each other, things of that sort. So that's where it starts to become a bit of a mess. But let's say that you're just starting out, you can't do A/B testing or any of that type of stuff, or your team already has OmniConvert, but you're looking to do other things. I don't know, but the reality here is there's a ton of different types of data I would be looking at. The first, of course, is analytics. You really need to be thinking about analytics. There's all the tools out there that are great for that, but I'm talking about just site usage analytics, understanding where people are dropping off in the funnel, where they are deserting, how long people are spending on pages. Now, time on site, just to call that out really quickly, is not a metric that I think should be optimized for. I think that the longer people spend on your site, the worse off it is, because that means that it's would be harder for them to complete the task they're looking to do, not easier. So it's a false indicator for most marketing folks, vanity metric. But having all the analytics in place, then looking at usage data of how people are engaging with your website. So heat maps, scroll maps, click maps. I often, when we're looking at click maps, one of the long running jokes with our team here is we look for things called rage clicking. This is where people are clicking on something on your site that's not an actual clickable item because they think it should be. So we see this all the time with social proof. When people put logos up on their site of, places, media mentions and things of that sort, people try to click on them because they want to see what it's when you were on the news on this major news station, what was actually said, right? Just having the logo up there doesn't tell them a whole lot. And so people start clicking on, but they're very rarely clickable. So if you can start understanding where people are getting frustrated, then you can start turning around and running testing on that when traffic picks back up for you, or when it really starts to make sense to do so.
Yeah, I have also an input here. I don't know if you know, but today is the last day when we offer OmniConvert for e-commerce merchants with less than 100 employees, completely free for the next year. So in case you are interested to get into A/B testing and into web personalization, here's the link. We've also we've already gave 750,000 euro worth of technology and tech credits for companies. So that's our
awesome. Thank you for doing that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So John, if you have customers which have less than 100 employees, please let them know.
I will.
Free to work with for them. So that was our last questions. We are thinking about one-to-one hyper personalization tool with for every visitor own profile, or is a tooling with 10 personas or segments better? I don't quite understand your questions, Edward. So I'm going to ask you the last question, John, which is out of the scope of conversion rate optimization. So what about self-optimization? What about user growth? Tell us your hack. Tell us your advice that you would give to your younger self. Tell us how you are growing as an individual.
Well, I think meditation has been key for me. I think especially during this time, the mental health aspect of everything is so key. And just, first thing I do when I get up in the morning, I don't check my email. I leave my phone alone and I just take 15 minutes and meditate. And I think that's been the best possible thing that I could do for my mental health. I've been doing that for years. And, as I'm sure running and growing a company is stressful in itself. And then put the pandemic on top of all of that, and it just compounds the stress. So, and having children at home all day without any breaks at all, and trying to do all these other things you were normally doing, it's a lot right now. And so taking a few minutes to kind of take a break is really important. And I think on top of that, learning how to learn. And I think that's really key. How do you learn best? Is it through listening? Is it through reading? Is it through doing? If you can figure that out, then you can hack yourself to grow exponentially over time. And I look at almost everything in my life as an A/B test. And I think that, I like to A/B test different ways of learning. And I now learn best by listening. And I learn best by teaching others. And so I think that it's really important for everyone to figure that out for themselves.
Perfect. So, John, where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So thegood.com, TheGood.com. And feel free to just email me if you have questions. I do try to read every email that comes in. I'll put my email address in the chat, but it's just Jon, Jon at thegood.com. If anybody has any questions, feel free to just email me directly. I do try to read and respond to every email that comes in. I'd be happy to continue the conversation there.
Perfect. So, John, thanks a lot for being part of e-commerce growth show. And for you out there, stay safe wherever you are. Optimize your own lives, help your neighbors, and put a smile on your face, because everything will pass. All the best, everyone, and see you next Thursday, 3 p.m. UK time.